Today's video carries with it a bit of a disclaimer. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about today can be very life-changing, and I really believe can help set you free emotionally and mentally from some of the things that you may be wrestling with. However, if you struggle with codependency emotionally or even spiritually, this is going to be challenging to hear, and you're probably going to have to wrestle with it for a few days. But I promise you, if you can grab hold of it, it'll absolutely change your life and change your outlook both on yourself and your spouse or your partner. When I first heard the statement, "Your spouse is not your report card," it was tough to kind of understand it, because I went into marriage and, fortunately or unfortunately, was kind of taught that if Samantha wasn't happy, then it was my job to fix that, and that she was my report card for how I was doing as a man, as a person. And then as we launched out into recovery from my infidelity, I still kind of believed at some point, well, if she's not happy, if she's not doing well, my report card is reflecting a big fat F, and I'm failing. Because if Samantha's not doing well, I'm not doing well, I can't be doing well, something's wrong. For a long time in recovery, I had lived with this feeling of, oh, Samantha's being triggered, Samantha's flooding, Samantha's unhappy, Samantha's ambivalent. And so that was my report card. So I couldn't relax, I couldn't be calm, I couldn't be secure in my recovery work. And I'm not blaming anybody except myself and my mentality that I had believed that Samantha was my report card. Now I automatically know, and unfortunately there's nothing I can do about it, but there is always a small microcosm of unfaithfuls that will say, see, you're not my report card. I'm doing fine. I'm okay. It's you that have the problem. First, let me speak to you betrayed. I'm sorry that that has to happen. It's just not true. But again, it's an attempt to justify their affair, escape consequences, and really reinforce the fact that they are not safe. To you unfaithful that would try and do that, I just am begging you to not do that, because it just reveals how unsafe you are. If you'll give me another 5 or 6 minutes, I'll explain to you the truth and the kind of backdrop to the statement that your spouse is not your report card, and using that to justify a lack of empathy and a lack of love and a lack of concern for your spouse or partner really puts you in a bad position, because if you are void of the ability to display empathy, and if you don't have a conscience for what your actions have done to your spouse or your partner, you're going to be labeled a sociopath. And I don't think that you're a sociopath, but if you don't have empathy and you don't have a conscience, then I'm sorry, you're acting very sociopathically, and you're a dangerous person. So before I go any further, I have to answer the question, well, shouldn't you have a report card? And if your spouse isn't your report card, what is your report card? Well, I think at some level, to make it very simple, overly simplistic for the fact of what we're talking about, is what is the fruit of your life? If you look at your life, and the fruit of your life is pain and heartbreak and betrayal and relapsing with either the same affair partner or multiple affair partners, or you're involved in an addiction that you can't get free of or won't get free of, the fruit of your life is hypocrisy. The fruit of your life is the inability to live at a level that you would want your spouse to live at. The fruit of your life is pain and hurt and failure and an inability to abstain from behavior that is causing hurt and pain to both yourself, your spouse, and maybe even your children. Maybe if you come from faith, your report card is the Bible or Jesus. If you don't come from faith, maybe you have a moral code that hinges on do unto others as you would have done unto you. or basic laws of morality, but I'm pretty sure that those laws of morality do not endorse causing hurt and pain and trauma and PTSD to your spouse or partner and breaking fidelity. You see, there has to be a report card. To make it very simple, it's the fruit of your life. What is the fruit of your life right now? Now, getting back to why my spouse is not my report card, if your spouse is your report card, and if you're an unfaithful spouse, for example, what if your spouse is flooding or being triggered and lashes out and says some incredibly hurtful things to you? What if your spouse is just having a bad day and they are your report card, so they're having a bad day, that means that you have to have a bad day, or you can't be okay because they're not okay. And I'm sorry, we can be empathetic and we can be concerned, but it's codependency if we can't be okay with them not being okay. You see, my report card can't be something so subjective, especially when you're dealing with infidelity, because early on, or even throughout the early process of 1 to 3 years, Samantha would have terrible days. There's days she kicked me out. There's days she didn't want to be around me. There's days that she was having a terrible time because she was dealing with reminders and triggers and intrusive thoughts. That did not mean that she was my report card and that I was failing in recovery. I was doing everything during certain seasons. I was doing everything that I knew to do. Meeting with Rick, going to my groups, reading, praying, staying faithful to the process, and still she would have some terrible days, and that is going to happen. You see, when I make Samantha my report card, I make my life very unstable because there's going to be some bad days. And if I'm going to have bad days because she's having bad days, then what sort of stable, reliable, safe person am I going to be? And if I'm only having good days when she's having good days, I'm being insecure and codependent as well. I have to be okay with her not being okay. Now let me flip it. If you're a betrayed spouse, your spouse is not your report card because they cheated, because they went outside the marriage. That doesn't mean that you were a bad spouse. It means that they have their own dysfunction that they are having to wrestle through and deal with. If you make your unfaithful spouse your report card, then there's going to be days when they, unfortunately, maybe relapse or are tempted to relapse or are just not doing their recovery work. And you could make that about you and say, oh my gosh, I'm not loving them or being kind to them or wooing them back. No, no, no. They have to take ownership of their own recovery. Just like I, as an unfaithful spouse, have to take ownership of my recovery. And even if Samantha doesn't do well, that doesn't mean that I'm not doing my part. Because see, in recovery, you can do everything that you're supposed to be doing on your side, and your spouse may just have a terrible day. It sucks. It's painful. It doesn't excuse me from showing empathy and humility and remorse. That's being loving. It doesn't mean that Samantha, is my report card. It just means that, man, if I'm not capable of showing empathy and humility and love and respect and concern for her, there's something wrong with me. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, she is not my report card for my life. You see, finally, one of the biggest dangers is when my spouse is not having a good day and wrestling with stuff and is unkind or accuses me of things, and maybe that's out of a knee-jerk reaction, out of defensiveness, out of just anger or spite, and it's just not true. If my spouse is my report card, I'm going to hate myself so often. I'm going to get so down on myself so frequently, even though I could be doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. And so I want this to help set you free, that your spouse is not your report card. But what is your report card can be even more convicting of your choices. What is your report card? Is it the Bible? Is it a moral code? Is it an expert process that you're going through? Is it the 12-step model? What is it? You've got to have a report card. And you've got to be able to live true to that report card, because I'm pretty sure if it's a good report card, it's going to actually encourage you to be empathetic and to be kind and understanding and loving to your spouse, whatever side of the infidelity you are on.